Welcome to season 6 of the Breakthrough Show, Breakthroughs Around the World, conversations with 40 guests from 40 different countries, honoring our differences, acknowledging our similarities, and celebrating our connection. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, the creator of the Breakthrough Show Network. And for season 6, episode 10, I am so excited to introduce you to a new friend. Our guest today has an extensive background in education with a degree in elementary school teaching, a master's in learning difficulties, and a certified trainer, consultant, and coach in NLP. Her education has now come full circle as she's the principal of the very school that she attended. Representing the country of Mexico, please welcome Elsa Susana Domínguez Caballero to the show. Welcome, Susana.
Thank you, Jessica. So an honor for me to be here with you today.
I'm excited to have you here. I was really hoping to have someone from Mexico this year because we are sisters. We are right next door.
Yeah, yes, we are.
I love it. I love it. Well,
Very
speaking
excited
of
to be here.
yes, I'm excited to have you here. We got to know each other from Dorothy, who was one of our guests from earlier in the season, and through the For Love poem. So I love that I'm getting to know people through that poem as well, because that's the essence of the poem is coming together, I think. Don't you think so?
Yeah, that's a beautiful poem that has made such an impact in the world
Mm.
in different circumstances. And now that Dorothy is inviting us to give it life in different languages, I think it's going to be very powerful.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, speaking of Mexico, I would love to hear what you love about your home country.
Wow, well, I love so many things. I think I would have to start by saying that I love the people. First of all, I
Mm.
love people because Mexican people have a lot of certain qualities that I admire and that I'm proud of. For example, kindness. I think Mexican people, we are people that are considered kind, creative, happy. We tend to laugh about every situation, even if we have situations that are complicated. We tend to use humor as a mechanism of coping, but also of staying centered. I also love food. Mexico has amazing cuisine, and since it's a very large country, we have 32 states. Every state has a different cuisine, and
Mm.
most of them are even heritage, cultural heritage from the UNESCO. So it's maybe people from outside of Mexico might think that we have certain dishes that are all around the country, but that's not the case. We have very different cuisine in each state, and all of it is delicious. We have a lot of biodiversity, very different ecosystems, beautiful weather, beautiful cities, because we have a lot of culture. That's also something I love about Mexico. We have a lot of cultural heritage. So we have pyramids and we have colonial cities, and we still have indigenous towns. So traveling around Mexico is like traveling around very different countries in the world, because we have different influences from the countries that have been here in Mexico, and every landscape's different. So there are many things that I think I can say I love my country for.
So, one of the things that I have really enjoyed about this series is obviously we're featuring one person from each country, but I think we are really quick as humans to lump everybody into whatever we believe that culture of that country is about. And as you're saying, there are so many different parts of the country that's different. We learned that with our guests from India last month as well, how different. I mean, that country's huge,
It's
and
huge.
the parts of the country are so different. Um, when I know that your specialty is education, so we're going to get into this in a little bit as well. But I did want to ask about education in Mexico and maybe what you recognize as some of the differences there, because you teach emotional intelligence to teenagers. Now, this is not something that we see here in the United States, at least anywhere that I have seen. Is this just where you are, or is this something that you think is offered throughout Mexico? Like, what is your take on the education in Mexico?
Well, it was not something that was taught on the rest of Mexico. The school where I worked at, where I'm principal now, but where I used to study, it's a highlight from the school. It's something that the school has been doing since I was a student, and since the school first opened 35 years ago. But it
Mm.
was not something that was taught all around the country. But about I think 6 years ago, government started thinking of emotional intelligence as an important part of education, so they made it part of the curriculum. I don't know if all students around the country and all are actually receiving this education, because something can be in the curriculum, but it's different from actually being taught in classrooms. But at
Mm.
least it's considered there. It
Yeah.
was not considered, and this class was just something specific from my school. But
Mm.
now it's part of the curriculum of the whole country. But
Wow.
you were asking me about the differences. Well, here in Mexico, we have both public and private education. I
Mhm.
know you have that in the United States too, but here in Mexico is a little bit different, because most of the schools are public. I wouldn't say that the difference between public and private schools are circumstances related to the teachers, because we have amazing teachers in public school. I think it
Mm.
would be about more things like budget, or the resources in the school, or the places where they are, or the situation of the families that attend public school. So normally private schools here have different opportunities, more classes, more extra classes than public school. So it's not that the students are better students or the teachers are better teachers. We
Mhm.
are the same teachers, but we have different budget, different supervision, and different classes, such as foreign languages or music, arts, robotics, and stuff like that. So that's a big difference, and that's why the school where I teach emotional intelligence and neurolinguistic programming and problem solving is the private school I work at. I work in both public and
Mm.
private school, but that class I teach in a private school, which is the kind of subjects that are different from the public school ones.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it can be similar here. Depending on the budget of the school, more can be offered, whether it's public or private school. But then private schools tend to be, all of their funding comes from the people that go there and private entities. And so they're able to offer more sometimes than public school is as well. I know when we talked initially, Susanna, you were also mentioning about how here you have to go to the school that you're zoned for. Like you have to go to the school that is in the certain place where you're at.
Mhm.
That's not the case in Mexico, right? You can go to different places. Is that what you were saying?
In theory, we
Yeah.
the students should attend to the school where they live at, but
Mm,
normally they don't. In Mexico, we have a lot of commuting. I have
mm,
students in my school that come from 30 minutes away, and in the private school I've even have had students that travel from towns outside of my city an hour and a half to come to my school. So on paper you do have to enroll to the school, the public school, that it's near your house, but in practice we have most of the students from nearby, but many of the students from some other places. People
wow.
tend to see what kind of classes, what kind of teachers the schools have, and they are able, or they choose to travel to go to the school that they're looking for.
Mm, I love that though, because it gives us an opportunity um to find what we're looking for, to play matchmaker with the
Yeah.
kind of education that we want for our
Yeah.
children. I know we were also talking about some of the Mexico, like every other country, has areas that are more poor and areas that are more affluent. And so, what is the priority of education like in the poorer neighborhoods? Is it something that you're seeing, that the parents find important and there's just lack of resources, or is there an emphasis or lack of emphasis on the importance of education?
Well, it depends. For example, in the country, the emphasis is on finishing elementary school to try to go to the United States to work. So people are not very interested on inspiring their children to go further in their education, like for example high school or university, because Some of the towns have a lot of migration, so they just want to finish elementary school or the first years of high school and then travel to work somewhere else. But for example, in the city, education is seen as something important. But we have the situation that in the schools where people are very challenged economically, they they don't pay a lot of attention, and maybe not because they don't care about education, but because they have to work a lot, and also because some of
Mm,
these parents were not educated themselves, so they
mm,
cannot help their children with the homework because some of them don't even read or write, or at least not very fluently. So they do take the students to the schools, but they are not these kind of families that help them with homework, or that give a lot of value on what of to what's happening in school. So that's with with the schools where the economical challenges are more emphasized. But because in other schools, in the schools that are in the middle of the city, where we have parents who work and have
mm,
a degree, and they do value education and support their children, but in the more challenged economically wise schools, they don't have a lot of emphasis on valuing education,
mm.
and also a lot of other challenges, such as nutrition
Right.
and school supplies and transportation for the school. And now that we had the pandemics, many of my students are not attending the class because they have, for example, a grandparent at home that has still some issues from COVID, and there's
Yeah.
no one at home that can take care of them, so they have to stay home to take care of their grandparents. Or because, as you know, in Mexico we have very tight families, so
Mm.
we all help each other. So that's another situation that it's making students not give their full attention to school.
Yeah. That's the other thing I was going to ask you is about family dynamic and how you might see that. How is it different in Mexico as compared to what you've seen in other countries?
Well, here in Mexico, families are still very tight. So
Mm,
we keep communication. Many families still have family traditions like eating all together on Sunday, and I'm not talking about just father, mother, and children, but
yeah.
meeting with the grandparents, uncles, cousins. So um, most of the cases they live in the same city, so they are also a support net.
Mm,
So grandparents help parents to take the children to the school, but also the parents maybe bring food to the grandparents. So there's still a lot of communication, a lot of help among each other, and a lot of activities done together, and many children growing up close to their cousins, for example, not only their
mm,
brothers and sisters, but also their cousins. So I think it's a dynamic that has a lot of support. So right now that we face the pandemics, that's what happened here in Mexico. Mexico was not a country that could just shut down and everyone to their homes, because there's a lot of people that work on the streets informally,
mm,
in selling stuff on streets and stuff. So they couldn't stop working because they didn't have any savings. So what happened
right.
is that the parents kept on working almost all the time. I don't think Mexico really stopped in any
Mm,
period of the pandemic. So what happened is that the parents were still working, but the children were taken care of by grandparents, or maybe aunts that were at home, and they were helping each other. So one of them were providing for the whole family, and the other ones were the caregivers inside the house. So it was something that it was held as a family, not as independent families or isolated people.
right, right. I love that dynamic within the family of being closer to other people. I was primarily raised by my grandparents for a lot of my upbringing, and I feel like that getting exposure to other generations is important. I was close with my cousins as well. But that's not something we see often here. People are very, and even now with my kids, my mom and dad live far away. We don't have any family close to us at all. But then again, we have a large family too, so that helps out quite a bit. Um, but I love that dynamic because I think that exposure to other generations is really important for perspective and all of that as well. And so thank you for your perspective about your beautiful country. It's one of the places I really want to go. So I'm hoping I will get down there. I'm not far, not far here in the southern United States. So
And you're very welcome here in Morelia. I would be glad to receive you and your family in my home.
Yes, I love that. Well, we will definitely do that and have some good Mexican cuisine. There will be food happening. Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing. Healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every day for exclusive programming, special events, and a community to call home, where we invite you to explore, change the way you look at and live your life, and go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com. I'm excited to dig in, Susana, to a little bit of your story. Obviously, we mentioned that you have an extensive background in education. Have you always, I mean, I'd like to assume that you are a lifelong learner yourself, being in the field of education, but is that the case? Have you always been, passionate about learning yourself?
Yeah. In fact, many people think that I chose to be a teacher because my grandfather was a very famous educator here in Mexico.
Ah,
He was the author of a wide known pack of books, of math books in Mexico. And also my mother is a teacher, and she's the founder of the school, the private school where I work at right now. So many people think that that's the reason why I chose teaching, but that's not the reason. I felt it like a calling since I was very small. My brother, the brother that I have three brothers, but the brother that comes after me was having trouble to pronounce the R, the Mexican R, that it's very heavy when he was
yes.
little. So I remember that I don't know, maybe 7 when I asked my mother to buy my first board to start working with my brother and help him to learn how to pronounce the words right. So since then, I've loved to teach, but also to learn. I'm very
Mm,
curious. I was raised in a family of mathematicians, Freemasons, and a lot of thinking and a lot of talking and analyzing life and trying to learn about different perspectives. And I think that helped me to feed my curiosity and try to learn a lot throughout my life in very different topics, not only education, I'm
mm.
sorry, not only education, but many different topics. So I love learning. I've had great role models. My parents, for starters, I was telling you that my mother is an educator and she's a wonderful educator, and my father has been a person who's always been uh, patient enough to talk to me about different topics and try to make me think in different perspectives. My
Mhm.
grandfather was a very powerful influence in me. He was a wonderful person, also not only an educator, and also I have a grandmother right now who's 100 years old, and she's still learning. She still takes classes because
Oh
she
my
says that she
gosh.
wants to keep on learning, and she's going to be a learner until the day she dies, because she says that we're always we always have the opportunity to keep on learning and also sharing from yourself, because she's still a theater director kind of thing, so she's
Oh my
still
gosh.
set plays in a club. So I've had wonderful, amazing role models that have made me realize the importance of learning and sharing what you know to others, in a non-greedy way, but just sharing in an open way, to
Yeah.
if it can enrich someone else.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated right now. Like I would have completely I would be completely geeked out, as we say, to meet your family, because that I mean, do you feel like that has really been, even though you had this passion for learning inside, do you feel both personally and as an educator that that support from that family network is what is really important, to someone's level of education, how far they go, and all of that? How important has that been for you?
Well, I do think so. I know
Mhm.
that us as people, many times in our lives we come to a place where we have to choose if we
Mm,
just make become victims of our story or overcome our story in case we have had challenges in our lives, and maybe we can choose differently from what we've had. But it's easier to make that decision, to
yeah.
an empowering decision, if you have had a support net. So you will have
Hmm.
more skills and more personal resources, and a better chance to make good decisions and have a better attitude and to enjoy life and to value life if you have had that kind of example in your life.
Yeah.
You can also make that choice if you haven't had it, but it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. I mean, there's always, I think we always have the choice at the end of the day to choose different things, but we can do things, I think, to make those choices a little easier, if you will, than to just have to choose under extreme circumstances or challenging circumstances. I love that you talked about your father being open to different perspectives and talking to you about different things as well, because one of the reasons that I decided to homeschool my kids is because in the school system, it's very much like, here's a book, this is what you learn, period, end of story. There's no, like, what do you want to learn? There's no asking what your opinion is on what you're learning. There's not a lot of openness. How do you feel it's important to sort of balance that book education with also, involving the child in what they want to learn, or what they're good at or something like that? And how do you sort of balance that, if that's the case?
Well, I do believe firmly that learning is dependent from the state, the
Mhm.
emotional state. So I talk about that with my teachers a lot. I do think that it's very important to balance it, or even to give it even a better place to try to make students to think and learn and understand other perspectives and communicate with others, because specific contents are going to fade away if you don't use them very oftenly, but the
Mhm.
skills and the way that you see life and the values that you develop are going to be with you the whole time. So I tell them that that's why it's very important to build environments in school where students feel safe, when students feel valued, where students feel happy, so they keep motivated on learning, on giving their respect to others, because people who are violent normally have received violence in some point in their life.
Mm.
So if we want to make a better world, we need to resemble that world in our classroom. We need to build that kind of environment that we want to see in the world, just like as Mahatma Gandhi said, that you need to be the change you want to see in the
Yeah.
world. That's the same thing in school. You need to be the kind of teacher that you want your students to become, the kind of citizen that you want them to become. So you need to let them explore the topics that they're interested in, but also you need to give yourself the time to listen to them and hear what it's important for them, it's interesting for them. There's a Spanish educator called Cesar Cole, who says that personalized education is not teaching every student individually, but listening to your students and
Mm.
learning about their motivations, and then bringing them to the class. If you are having a math problem, maybe you can have a math problem about Roblox, because that's something that that they're amazed about. So it's
Yeah.
going to be motivating for them, and you're going to keep their attention. And it's also a way to link that new knowledge to something that they already know about, so it's going to be a more permanent knowledge. So I do
Yeah.
think that teaching values and teaching communication and teaching problem solving and teaching different perspectives, and challenging them to change their position and be empathetic, it's something that it's going to be more powerful in their lives than the specific contents of history or science
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was not really big into history when I went to school at all. I'm more interested in history now that I'm watching it repeat than I was back in school days. But I had a history teacher my senior year of high school. I was taking maritime history, and I was sort of more interested in that than other history classes because some of my ancestors served in the early naval forces in the United States here. So I was nice to see like our family name popping up in history books. But
Mhm.
that history teacher brought us to Battleship Cove in Boston, Massachusetts, and we had a scavenger hunt on a battleship. And so he really made it fun. And that was the first time I remember going, I kind of like history, I kind of like these things. But as I look back, I also had similar experiences in middle school where we reenacted a battle. We did a whole Ellis Island day where we talked about immigration and acted it all out. And those were the times that I remember to this day because they made it fun and they related it to things today, like you're saying. And I wish we could. I wish that was the experience for all children because then I feel like they would remember things so much better.
Exactly, and they would not only remember the content, the history content that they were teaching, but the experience. And I think
Right.
that's the value of those kinds of methods or approaches, because the students will remember the experience that they lived, and that's something that it's also going to build their self-confidence. For example,
Mm.
we in the private school where I'm principal, we tend to do a lot of trips. We even take our sixth graders to the United States, to Disneyland, because we know that those are things that are going to stick to them with them
Yeah.
for the rest of their lives. And that's also a way of saying, can you see that there are no borders, that you can reach anywhere in the world if you just try hard enough, and this is what is waiting for you outside of Mexico or your city. And all the fun you had is something that you can build for yourself if you make good choices.
Hmm. Yes, I'm emotional over here now because what an opportunity you're giving them to just because it's one thing to say this is what's possible and it's another thing to show and um prove to them like look you can see you can experience now and have them have that experiences. I love it. um I know that you also became interested in neurolinguistic programming, or otherwise known as NLP, and we have a show that we've been doing on every other Tuesday on the Breakthrough Show called My Way, where we're talking about people in business who are doing things their way or doing business outside of the box. I don't think that NLP is a common thing to mash up with education, but let's backtrack first. How did you become interested in NLP?
Well, my mother used to be the principal of the school where I'm principal at
Hmm.
back then, and she used to bring very innovative trainings for the teachers at the school. And one summer, she invited some teachers from the United States who came here in a workshop that was called something like 21st Century Education or something like that, and they talked about NLP. So my mother invited me there, and I heard about it, and it was like, boom, I want to know more about that. So I looked up for people who were teaching that here in Mexico. And it was funny because the sister of my mother's partner in school was an NLP trainer, and I didn't know before that, but after that I started training with her. And it was amazing. So after I finished my trainings with her here in Mexico, I decided to go to NLP. So I found NLP University in Santa Cruz, where is Santa Cruz is where NLP was invented. I don't know if
Mm,
invented is the right term, but where it
yeah.
came to life for the first time. So I went to Santa Cruz in California, and another and well, that's where the NLP journey started for me.
Mm, I love it. I love it. So when you got into it and were interested yourself, obviously you continued learning. Now you're able to teach and train in NLP and everything as well. At what point did you decide to bring it to your education experience, to the teaching that you were doing?
Yeah, from the very beginning, I learned
Mm,
NLP for education because the training was for teachers. But
mm,
when I had the, in fact, I think that's one of my main breakthroughs in life, when I found NLP, because I found
mm,
it when I was 19, just about to finish university and right before I got married and I started my adulthood life. So I gained a lot of resources through NLP.
mm,
And when I started studying it, I realized that it was not just for one specific area of my life, but the skills were able to enrich all of the skills in my life at
mm,
once. But also, I started to see that the communication skills that I was learning, for example, the problem solving skills that I learned in NLP, will make it easier for me for not having problems in the first place with my students, because I already
mm,
knew how to avoid them. Or there are some NLPers who work specifically on strategies for education, such as Robert Dales, who has a lot of skills, a lot of not skills, a lot of techniques for
mm,
education, such as reading faster or memorizing easier, or comprehending mental calculation easier. And I started. I tend to have a lot. I think it's easy for me to make connections in general. So
mm,
when I started learning NLP and I was studying in the university at the same time, I was thinking like, okay, like I'm learning here that when you look with your eyes up, you're thinking in terms of images. So if mental math has to do with being able to do the operation in your head, so maybe if I apply these to education, I will have a better result. And I started moving skills from one place to another and putting them in practice, and I saw that it was making things for students easier. So I kept on going, and I started to study with some of the NLPers that work specifically on education, such as Michael Grinder. He has a lot of things on group dynamics
mm,
and nonverbal communication in classrooms. So I studied further, but also from the main NLP, it helped me, as I was telling you, in building my own family, in communicating with my original family, in communicating with my co-workers, in having a better relationship with my friends, with my students, with everyone. So really, NLP is something that in a very natural way you can extend to any area of your life.
Oh, yes, it's fascinating. And so I would love to rewind for just a minute. And for anybody that's listening today who has said, okay, you're talking about NLP, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you explain to everybody briefly what exactly NLP
Of
is?
course. NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. NLP is something that started back in the 70s, as a way of modeling excellence, as a way of observing what is it that someone does that makes what they do excellent, and try to find their strategy and teach it to someone else to have a similar a similar success with what they're doing. But
Mm,
also is a way of understanding subjective experience. This way of having the chance to analyze. For example, if someone says, well, doctors told me that I was not going to be able to live further than 3 months, but here I am 15 years later. So NLP goes and analyzes what did that person do, and how can we learn from it and teach it to someone else so they can benefit from that experience. But also, if in that experience they say something like, well, light came into me and gave me the health, we don't question if that light was an angel or was a phantom or was a,
Mm.
we just start to understand what that subjective experience did to the person, and how can we resemble that subjective experience to have a similar result for someone else.
Mm.
So it's modeling excellence and spreading it. So that's why we model excellence in health, and we model excellence in leadership and in education. So for example, in neurolinguistic programming in education, NLPers have gone to classrooms and have observed teachers that are very effective and teachers that are not very effective, and they have contrasted their strategies and extracted their steps and the things that make them effective, and then they teach it to other teachers so they can have this same degree of effectiveness. And that's somehow the way neurolinguistic programming works.
I love it's so fascinating to me because I've used NLP where my health is concerned with a practitioner. And so I've seen it from that perspective, but I hadn't heard about it from the education perspective before. And so this is really fascinating for me. Have you ever had a teacher or a parent or a student that's closed off to any of the techniques? And if so, how do you sort of explain it to them, or how do you get them on board with trying some of the different NLP techniques?
Well, I can think of one because normally I don't go on my everyday life saying what I'm doing is NLP. So
Yeah.
it's just me. So they don't tend to close because I tend to be very open about my intentions when I work
Mm,
with someone. So I want to help you. I'm going to do this with you. This is what I want to this is what I want you to achieve. So I think the clarity, the openness, the honesty beforehand is what has made people to stay open. In
mm,
fact, one of the most challenging audiences that I've had has been judges and magistrates,
mm,
because they don't tend to study these kind of models.
mm.
So for a period of time, I trained judges and magistrates, and everyone told me no, they are very close-minded and they are very rigid. And I developed a training where I rationally started explaining them what NLP was about and why the techniques would help them with their work and with their personal life, in a way that it was like in small baby steps. So when we reached the end of the training, which was the spiritual level of being, they were absolutely open, because they knew I had no hidden agenda. I was not trying to get them to believe something in particular. I was just trying to give them tools for them to be happier, healthier, and relating better to others, and also
Mm.
doing their job better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's smart. Meet people where they are. And I think when we go in, that's why with this platform, we're so passionate about storytelling, because people don't like to be preached to and told, you have to do this and this is the way it has to be done. It's so much nicer to reach people when we tell a story or when we share a life experience, rather than to tell someone, if you don't do it like this, your life's not going to change, you know? So meeting people where they are, I think, is so important. If you had a dream as far as education is concerned, what would you love to see as far as education goes in the world?
Connection.
Mm,
I would love to see that that all the teachers in the world understand that we are working with people, not with contents, not with books, but with people.
mm,
So the most important thing about education is the connection that you establish with your students, and that as we are all human beings, it doesn't matter if you're the adult and there are children, or if you're a teacher and there are students. That's not any kind of hierarchy. It's just that we are people together, and we are just as valuable. So if you give yourself the chance to open and connect and touch a soul, it will be much more meaningful than any content and any strategy that you use in the classroom. So if we were able to give them meaningful connections and experiences, our students wouldn't be as tempted to look extreme experiences somewhere else or detaching from life so easily.
I love that connection. Connection. It's a great place to start and a great place to finish, I think.
Escogeré al amor, incluso con el alma quebrada, incluso con el corazón acongojado. Escogeré al amor porque el mundo está herido, no solo mi pedacito de tierra, donde estoy casi siempre segura, donde estoy casi siempre bien, sino en nuestro mundo, en todos lados, todos los días. Escogeré al amor porque necesitamos más luz, no más muertes, no más poder, no más bombas. Escogeré al amor para que nuestros niños estén seguros, para que nuestros amigos estén protegidos, para que nuestras fronteras estén abiertas. Escogeré al amor incluso con el alma quebrada, incluso con el corazón acongojado.
So I would love to get to our 10 quick fire questions today. We've been having a lot of fun with this throughout the season and getting to know people a little bit better. Are you ready, Susanna?
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Number 1, what is your morning beverage of choice?
I drink both coffee and tea, and both every day.
At the same time?
Well, maybe not at the same time, but one after the other one.
I love it. I love it. All right. Number 2, when are you most productive?
I would say at night, even though I like to sleep a lot, but I'm most productive at night. Yeah. I wrote my books at night. I remember I wrote my books from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. maybe.
Wow. Wow. Obviously inspired that time of night. Which season is your favorite?
I love summer because I love traveling. I don't like heat. I prefer cold weather, but I love summer because that's the time of the year where I get to travel, which is the thing I love to do the most.
I love it. I love it. All right. Number 4, what is something you're learning right now?
Well, something specific would be Italian. I'm practicing Italian, but I'm learning of many different things because I'm always looking for books or TED Talks or videos about different topics, and I love to be learning about many different things, not only education at the same time, because I think that's what makes a brother a map of the world, a brother perception of the world. So I learn from different topics at the same time, so I can get to have a broader perspective.
I love it. All right. Number 5, here's an education question for you. What were your best and worst subjects in school?
I think I would say one of my best was philosophy. I loved it. It was in high school. But the other one, it's something similar to you. The second one would be history, but it was also the worst one. Throughout elementary school and junior high school, I didn't like history at all. But I have a teacher just like the one that you were describing in upper grades in high school, who I keep in touch right now as well. And she was such a wonderful person, an inspiring one, a passionate one, that it turned it around and turned history into being one of my favorite classes in high school at the end. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I love the turnaround from that. You can go from not being so good at something to turning it around. All right. Number 6, what scares you?
I don't think there's I don't think fear is an emotion that comes to me very oftenly. If I would have to think about it, in fact, I tend to do a lot of different experiences. I just a couple of weeks ago, I jumped from a plane skydiving because I love those kinds of things. So I'm not a very fearful person. But if I have to think about fear, I think I would. The thing that makes me maybe scared would be to think that something might harm the people I love, maybe health wise or violence wise, but thinking that someone that I love might be in pain or emotionally or physically, that's something that would be fearful for me.
Yeah. I agree with you on that one. Number 7, have you ever been in love?
Oh, yeah. And I love being in love. And
Yes.
in fact, it's something I tell my students all the time when I teach them, especially when we have the sessions about sex education.
Mm.
I tell them, I wish that you fall in love. And I
Oh,
wish that you fall in love passionately, because it's one of the most amazing feelings in life. And I tell them, and when that love ends, you're going to feel like you're dying, but
mm,
something, you won't. And
yeah.
you will have another chance to fall in love again and feel alive again. And I wish you love.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. All right. Number 8, what inspires you?
My family,
Mm,
my students, and it's a great inspiration for me when I believe I have something that I can share, and that can spread light or joy to others. And when someone tells me, what you did with me, or what you told me, or the conversation we had, uh, did something for my life, that inspires me to keep on doing that more,
mm.
and trying to spread more light or more joy. And also, I know I'm a human and I cannot do it all the time, but the times that I have some feedback that I was able to achieve that goal inspires me to do more of that.
Mm, beautiful. If you have any at all, how do you enjoy your downtime?
Well, I love traveling,
Mm,
but I also love walking. I
mm.
walk 7 kilometers at least 4 times a week.
Wow.
Sometimes in the treadmill because it's late and whatever, but the way that I enjoy it the most, if I go outside and walk, and especially when I take my girls with me. I love walking with my girls. I have 2 daughters, and that's a meaningful time because we exercise together, but also it's a time where they are talking to me about the things that they're excited about, and so we are walking and experiencing and in a mindful way, and also connecting. So I love walking. Yeah.
Mm, that's beautiful. All right. Finally, which culture do you deeply respect and or want to learn more about other than your own?
Oof. I think I want to learn more about everywhere in the world. That's why I love traveling. And every time I travel, I try to study a little bit about the culture where I'm going to be visiting, and to be respectful to their culture, and also to understand what's happening when I'm
Mm,
there. But also, I try to learn about their culture, and from their perspective, reflect on my culture and our culture here in Mexico, and try to see why they see the world differently, and why that perspective can enrich the way I see perspective here, and then share it with my students and with my colleagues. And so I respect all of the cultures. I know they all have value and they all have challenges, and I love to learn from different cultures. So that's why I love traveling.
beautiful. Beautiful answers to our 10 quick fire questions. You made it. You did it. And I love that perspective of the last question as well, because that's really what we're trying to do here on the show this year is showcase the different countries, but the little mini cultures within countries in the cities, and then within our own households, how different things can be. But we have the opportunity whenever we approach a different culture to do as you're saying, to look at what's the perspective of it, like how does it relate to our own culture, what are the differences, how can we honor them. And so I commend you for taking that approach to different cultures as well. I know that you have shared with us the website for your school that people can go and check out, where you are principal of. What else can they find when they're on that site, Susanna?
Well, they can maybe they can find our philosophy as a school, and also a gallery of activities when you can see the kind of experiences that we build for students. And also the idea, we have the main idea in school that a student that learns happy learns better. So that's
Oh,
why we tend to focus all of our work on creating the best environment and the best experiences for them to be happy and grow healthy, and with the best personal resources that we can give them to face the
oh.
life challenges. Yeah.
Oh, that's so refreshing because we just don't hear that anymore. We just like for the majority, we don't hear like let's make an effort to make our kids happy and then understanding that that affects their level of education and it affects what they're going to do in the world. And so I love that, Susanna. You guys, I put her email down the bottom as well if you'd like to connect with Susanna via email. Thank you so much for being here today, my new friend. It was so much fun to get to sit down and talk to you today.
Thank you, Jessica. It was quite an honor and exciting, very exciting for me. I have never had an interview in English before.
You did so good. And see, I had to not I was not going to test my Spanish skills today. I was not going to do it because I am relearning Spanish right now and I'm trying to remember some of the things that I learned when I took Spanish in school very many years ago. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah. But as I was telling you, you and your family are very welcome with my husband, my girls, and me here in Morelia. Morelia is a beautiful colonial city surrounded by indigenous towns, and we can have a lot of fun here and eat delicious.
Yes. I will be so excited to start looking into that. Absolutely. Susanna, thank you again for being here today with us.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you.
All right, you guys, it's been another fantastic episode today. I want to remind you of a couple things. Don't miss out when we have new episodes. You can join our text community in the US, Canada, and Puerto Rico. Just text the word breakthrough to 256-6857-092. That's 256-6857-092. You can also from anywhere in the world join our Discord server to chat with other fans, meet past guests and hosts of the Breakthrough Show Network. Just go to bit.ly/Discord breakthrough, bit.ly/Discord breakthrough. Such a great show today. I really enjoyed having Susanna on. I, of course, am grateful to all of you for being here wherever you're tuning in from around the world. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I want to remind you to make every day a great day for a breakthrough. We'll see you next time.